Hi everyone, my name is Sunny and today's video is going to be about Pluto in Sagittarius or Pluto in the ninth house. So if you guys have this placement, you're going to notice that you're going to have a lot of transformational experiences, whether you consider them positive or negative, regarding higher education, meeting foreigners, travel, as well as whether you're applying for, like, example, government paperwork regarding like travel visas, for example. That could be another one, or work visas. To work in a different country. These are some examples that you can see, as well as your philosophies and faith. So, for example, if you have this and you start noticing that if you want to travel, you could have this fear of traveling, for example, and you don't know whether you're gonna have a good experience because maybe you might have experienced some negative experiences with people who made things very traumatic for you psychologically. Maybe you saw something, like you saw some news, and those world news maybe saw this like accidental crash, right, of maybe airplanes or maybe like trains or something that you felt that you really got spooked by. You really instilled that fear of like, oh, this can happen if I travel. So you are scared to travel. You're scared to endure this journey that you could be having, and you're not. I guess you're letting the fear get the best of you, right? So it has maybe some similar connotations to Saturn, except Saturn just delays things and puts obstacles, and it's more than likely based on authority figures. This one is not so much just based on authority figures and obstacles. It's more so a psychological fear that you might have instilled on yourself, or it just kind of naturally happened as you progressed with learning about things. When it comes to this placement as well, you could have fear of foreigners. Maybe you also you don't have to see them on TV, but maybe because you encountered them, maybe it's a certain community, a race, a gender. That's more Aquarian, but let me give you a better example. It's more so you experience people that are very different from the norm that you grew up with. So more than likely they're going to be spiritually based or religious based, or even if they're not like these, it could be educative people, like professors, right? Not so much teachers. Teachers are, I consider them also on the third house, which is Gemini's house, sorry, because they teach primary school, middle school, and high school. I still consider those your early formative years. I see these more of like your expansive years, where you're expanding your education, your adult education, right? So that can be like that, where you have professors that are harsh with you, or judgmental. They don't allow you to progress easily, and you just have this mental block that like you're not good enough or you're less than compared to your other students because they are doing better than you, or you're creating scenarios that maybe are not even existing, and it's just because you're scared to confront the situation head on, that this person has this power over you. This professor, it's like this professor has your entire future in their hands, right? And if they don't pass you because they just dislike you, or they want to pick at you because they want to show their dominance over you, that control, and maybe you could be right. It may be just them being jerks, but it's how you react, how this placement will allow you to gain control of the situation that can be brought from others onto you. So it can be scary, it can be unfortunate, but sometimes it's like that. I think everybody has gone through that period where you meet educators who are not fair, to put it simply. They can have their own agenda, or they can be creeps, right? I'll put it that way. They can be creeps with you. They can creep on you as a student, and you feel that dynamic. It's like you feel you're worthless, but they have their future, your future in their hands, and it makes you feel uncomfortable if they're making those advances to you, right? As that Plutonian energy that has a lot of inner fire drive, or let me switch up the words if you're not getting that sex drive, right? That they feel it. It's like they want to experience it, and you feel threatened by that. It's like that Jupiter energy can be scary to you to encounter because it's transformational. It makes you distrust people. It makes you seclude yourself and isolate yourself and be very protective of that space, right? So you can notice that can be a transformational experience where you might not want to pursue your education anymore, and you want to release it, or you take a big break, because it can also happen in extremes where you're really good at doing your education, and then suddenly that event happens and it triggers that traumatic event at your expense, and you decide to walk away, and it's eating at you. It's like in your mind, it's feeding and feeding, and you're feeding into it, and it's just growing and growing and growing until you finally have to, face the fact that it's become an issue, right? So it might take you a very long time to actually deal with these matters, until you finally maybe decide to report it, or you finally decide to go back and just move your education degree, or you find a way to find that loophole, because you've done a lot of research to get yourself out of this, right? So you're gonna learn these things, which can be scary, and you're gonna learn that it's something that you have to experience in the long run, and building up that trust in the person that you built that faith into, because they're supposed to educate you, is going to be difficult, right? So that can also happen with religious leaders that you put your faith on, and they were traumatizing to you. It doesn't always have to be in that aspect of wanting to, how could I say, of wanting to instill fear through SCX drive, right? But sometimes it can be over different power of like finances. It can be scary to feel like people might not have the best intentions when it comes to, like, you assume that because you're following a certain faith, you believe that people would follow morale and fair values, right? And behind closed doors, they can be very different people, and you just happen to be the person who catches these things because you have that Plutonian energy that you see behind the facade. Unfortunately, sometimes that's how you entertain the idea of your Pluto. It's having these dark experiences, right? And you might see them, launder money, for example, or take some money for themselves, and it's things like that kind of bring disillusion into yourself, as well as you can experience yourself falling out of love with your faith. And it can be an extreme where it's like you fall out of love with your faith, and it's like you go from faith to no faith, you become agnostic, you become atheist, and that makes a whole transformational experience to you. And it can be scary, and it would probably cause a lot of emotional backlash, and as well as mental anguish, because it's something that you've always done and you've experienced, and suddenly for that to have to change because of certain experiences you felt can be unfortunate. But it's something that you needed. Deep down you knew you needed it, because it had to change. Otherwise you would have continued to do something that went against your values and what you would stand. So it has a lot to do with stuff like that, where there's a lot of internal battles, especially because of Jupiter. Sorry, my throat's getting scratchy. Jupiter takes this to a very intense level. If Pluto Pluto obsesses a lot. Jupiter magnetizes this. It's like, it's all or nothing, and it's like 10 times worse. So you can experience these pretty intense battles within you of character, of values, of philosophies, that maybe your philosophies change, and you explore things that are very different from you in the occult. For example, like somehow you are also practicing, if you decide to, for example, like I said earlier, leave your education, your formal education, you might decide yourself to go to an alternative way of schooling, like practicing spirituality, and you learn through these different methods that there's more to life than what you experienced thus far, right? And you can enjoy that, but it can be very transformational to learn this process of like leaving one thing and leaving the DEATH of this particular thing, and then having this rebirth of something completely different. It can be the same when it comes to travel. Maybe you were accustomed to not traveling. Let me just take a sip of water because I think I'm too scratchy. Maybe you start one way when it comes to these things, and then you start with something else. I think it's scary for you, particularly to jump ahead, but if you trust yourself, because Jupiter is still a benevolent planet, even if it magnifies things, the negative things as well, the obsessive tendencies, you're gonna notice that there's this softness to this change of like, you know what, this happened, but I learned my lesson. I'm not gonna let others take that power away from me, and I can help others. It feels like you want to heal people. With Jupiter, it's an interesting, I think you're gonna enjoy having Jupiter teach you the good aspects as well, because Jupiter tends to be a very, it's a very giving planet. So when it comes to this, I think you're gonna learn that you're gonna mature pretty fast. Unfortunately, that's what Pluto does, especially with Jupiter, but it's needed. And you're probably gonna teach people about this, but maybe not teach them up front. You're probably gonna teach them on the down low, or when they're comfortable to talk to you, the people that were marginalized very similarly to you and these traumatic experiences, you're gonna be someone that's gonna be the voice that they needed to hear. It's like almost like advocating, right? Like of these things, right? So even meeting foreigners can be pretty traumatic, because you might have had not pleasant experiences. They might have been too aggressive, right? I'm trying to tread with some caution, with some verbatim, when you actually meet them, and you kind of get turned off by the idea of meeting anybody else. So you become not secluded, but very protective and like you cocoon yourself. So you don't allow people to really get to know who you really are, or how open you are to things. It's like your faith is very protective of what you believe in, and your opinions and your values. So you can astound yourself at the end of this experience. It can be very scary to deal with this, as well as all the secrets that it comes with. I feel like you're going to be very secretive about, for the most part with this placement, you're going to be very secretive when it comes to your faith. And whether this is a retrograde planet, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but whether it's a retrograde planet or a direct planet, the retrograde planet is just going to take just a bit longer, right? Because it's still an outer planet. The outer planet of Pluto will take a long time to manifest itself completely, and you're going to experience this all your life. And then when it's retrograde, it's just going to slow down the experiences, right? But that doesn't mean you're not going to experience the same things. It's just a tad bit slower. So it's a little bit more internalized as well, and you're going to be keeping those things to yourself, close to your heart, right? So these are some things that you're going to learn with this placement. You're going to learn to navigate the world a little bit differently, a little bit darker, a little bit more introverted probably, and you're going to learn that there's a lot of transformation when it comes to traveling, not just from the outside world, like meeting, like cross country or things like that, but also internally and spiritually from the mind. The mind can be explored as well, not just the outer world. So these are some things you can notice. I'm trying to think of anything else before I end the video because I don't want to miss anything. I redid this video like 2 times because the camera died, so I don't know if I messed up anything, but yeah, I think your ethics overall are going to be coming to the front when it comes to these things, because you're going to have your own ethics and they're going to be very different to what other people's ethics are, and you're going to take some time to get there, but you will get there. And you will also be attracted to learning about CULTS. I have to spell this out, of course, you know, for the algorithm. Mostly because there's darkness in this. It's the taboo topics are very enticing to you. So you research all the occult knowledge that you can, as well as the twisted ways where faith can go wrong, right? So you're gonna be interested in things like that. Maybe you are helping people who went through these things, right? So that's what I have for you guys. I will write down anything else that I have, and thank y'all for listening, and